busy weekend on the racing calendar. We can't cover it all here, otherwise we'd need 2 hours, but a very busy weekend in the world of motorcycle racing.
Yeah, for sure, Pat. We had quite a bit going on this weekend in MotoGP. We had another first-time winner in Morbidelli, who races a Petronas Yamaha. So that's another privateer win in MotoGP. And Pekka Bagnaia and the Pramac Ducati finished in second, so that was his first podium. Following that, we had the Moto America event, and it was held this weekend in New Jersey, and Cameron Beaubier did the double again. So he seems to have a stranglehold on that championship.
Well, that's Beaubier, I think, might be, when it's all said and done, if he hasn't already, have the most AMA National Superbike wins. He has just been absolutely dominant this year. An update on our Canadian rider, Alex Dumas, who had been racing in the Stock 1000 Championship. He, of course, had that nasty crash in the first Superbike race a couple of weeks ago at the Ridge, broke his right arm. I believe has had surgery, is on the mend. He was not at New Jersey. He has dropped from third in that championship to fifth, but the good news is he's just 5 points out of third, and hopefully he can, I'm not sure if he'll be back this weekend because Moto America is going to be racing at Barber Motorsport Park, but then they'll go to Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the road course there, October 9, 10, and 11. And then they wrap up the Moto America Championships at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. That is October 23 to 25. So still lots of racing to go there. And hopefully Alex Dumas gets a chance to get back out there on his Suzuki.
Yeah, definitely. There was also obviously a great event, it sounded like, at SOAR, and we'll have Ken get into that more. But there was Steve Nickerson seemed to be the big winner there. And then as an amateur, Trevor Dion was, he won both amateur classes, the 600 and the Superbike, as far as I can tell.
Well, at SOAR, we've been following the pro sport bike class because I think that has been extremely hotly contested, and Chris Pletch and David McKay, after the weekend's racing was all over, are tied in the points championship going to the final round, which comes up on the October 3rd and 4th weekend. So let's bring in Ken McAdam right now with SOAR. Ken, first of all, I want to congratulate you and your staff there at SOAR. You've done a great job of working through all of the challenges and protocols and procedures with COVID-19 to put on what is now 5 great race weekends. And tell us how the weekend went from your perspective in terms of entries, the racing, and having to deal with a little bit of weather, but it looks like most of that rain fell overnight.
Yeah, you know what? The weather at Grand Bend is like a question mark. Swear to God, they have no clue. The day's weather forecast is never right. Forget a week in advance. So we never really know what we're going to get. But we actually scored pretty well in the weather department. We had a bit of rain Sunday morning, so I held off starting the races half hour later. Made us run a bit late, but we mostly were in the dry, so it wasn't so bad. Yeah, our numbers are honest to God, the best they've ever been. Partially because I think people just want to get out of the house. If you want to race motorcycles on the East Coast, at least, we're the only game in town. You know, VRA ran one event. The Nationals have had a pocketed kind of series, if you will, with Pro 6. So, you know, race is struggling. So if you want to race motorcycles, I guess we're the only place to go. So we're running probably 250 entries a weekend. Our grids are all full. Yeah, I'm not complaining about any of that. The riders have been wonderful as far as dealing with what the province is throwing at, excuse me, what the province is throwing at us as far as restrictions and how we have to operate and, you know, protocols and such. So, yeah, we've been rolling with the punches. We got a bit lucky with the dates, you know, coming into this. We were involved with the track and a bunch of other tracks in the province, actually most of the tracks in the province, in petitioning the province to allow us to open on a restricted level. So we were included in the first round of that. So that allowed us to open. Then the Nationals dropped out of their series, at least as far as Grand Bend is concerned. So that opened it up another weekend, allowed me to move everything one weekend forward. And we were able to basically shift everything. And, you know, there's a series of events that allowed us to run a full season, which is amazing to me, because I didn't think we were going to be able to, and that's just the way it's worked out. So far, so good. We've had to make adjustments. It's not been, you know, everything is normal, but yeah, I'm quite happy with how things are going.
I think current rules allow for 100 spectators. Those tickets have got to be like gold for race fans who've been starved for actually getting out physically to the racetrack. How many of those tickets did you sell on the weekend?
Well, I'm not really involved with the gate. I don't deal with that part of it. But as far as I understand, I mean, they sell them all. And most of them are done at pre-sale. So guys,
Right.
you know, call up and order tickets in advance so that they don't get turned away at the gate. I mean, the other side of this is that the province unrestricted. Some things you're allowed 100 people in, for instance, in an open area gathering. You're allowed up to 10 people in a bubble, which allows basically riders to bring in more people with them. So more crew, if you will, to can come in with them. So if you start doing the numbers, you're looking at, you know, say a couple hundred people that are coming in with, you know, say 4 or 5 apiece plus the 100 gate. It's a pretty full house, but you got to remember you're dealing with 450 acres. So it's not like everybody's all crammed in a room together.
And your final round, we mentioned Pro Sport Bike being very, very close there, a tie between David McKay and Chris Pletch. How are the championship battles in some of the other classes? And you've got just one round to decide those coming up October 3rd and 4th. Anything special planned for that weekend?
Oh, I'd like to say, I mean, I hate it. I messed up in 2011 when we first went to Grand Bend, and I booked a weekend on Thanksgiving because I'm a man and I don't know any different, and I totally messed up and did that. I didn't even know.
What a turkey.
I agree.
What a turkey.
I agree. I ate that hard. So come about July, people were coming to me and go, what the hell were you thinking? And when they did that, I'm like, sorry, you know? And so then they're like, well, how do we fix this? And I'm like, well, I can't change it now. So the people in the paddock actually decided that we were going to have Thanksgiving dinner at the track. So it turned into just this massive thing where we're doing actual full-on Thanksgiving dinner for 250 people. It's insane. And we've done it every single year since because of that one mess up. Unfortunately, this year we're not going to be able to do that, right? There's no way to functionally do it and stay within rules, so we won't be doing it. That being said, this round we're actually doing something a little bit different. We're going to have riders choosing the last configuration, because we're lucky in the sense that the track has multiple configurations. We can run it different directions. We do, you know, all kinds of different things. Well, our whole season, we don't run the same configuration twice. So this round, we're going to leave it open. I've already actually put the poll up on our Facebook group, including a completely new one that we've never run before. And so far, that's winning about 2-1. So we'll see how it happens. They've got till the 25th to decide, and we're going to figure out what configuration we're running then. The riders will choose what we run, you know, so we'll see how that goes.
And Ken, what's that new configuration like in terms of track distance and maybe some new tricky corners, particularly when you've got so many close championship battles going down to the wire, everybody's going to be, for the most part, starting from scratch on a new layout.
Yeah, well, again, it's them that are choosing it, right? So I'm not putting it on them that they have to choose it. They're the ones that are deciding they're going to choose it. So for that, I'm not going to apologize. You know, if they're the ones that are going to choose it, and they're the ones that are going to have to live with the choice. It is actually, ironically, the shortest course that we run, and I'm going to throw it up as a reverse. So we're going to run it in the opposite direction. And the way that lays out on the track is the last three corners are going to be, they're extremely tight and they're very awkward. So it's going to be, I guess, game on. Whoever can figure it out the best and get through it the best and send it down to the start line, the best will win. You know, you were talking about the Pro 600 class. The one guy you're forgetting in the mix is Dylan Bauer. Dylan Bauer he's beaten Chris multiple times. He's beaten
Elliot Vieira.
He's beaten Vieira. He beat Vieira this weekend, and he was right behind McKay. So he's the monkey in the wrench that could change things out and really change things up. So I mean, not taking away from Chris or David. I mean, both those guys are extremely quick. Elliot's always in the game, but Dylan Bauer is also a force to be reckoned with.
So, yeah, I mean, those two riders, Pletch and McKay, tied. But as you said, Vieira, I believe, is sitting third, and I assume Bauer is right there in fourth. He could play the role of spoilers. So if you haven't been out to a racetrack to watch live road racing, October 3rd, 4th, you can grab one of those 100 tickets that are available through Grand Bend Motorplex. Ken, if somebody is listening in tonight or are going to catch this on YouTube, how do you go about getting one of those 100 spectator tickets available for your final round, October 3-4?
Well, the best way is to call the gate at Grand Bend Motorplex. Talk to Lori and she can hook you up on that. You can send an email. I would phone, but I'm old, so I'm more prone to do that. But you can also send an email, and I'm sure they could hook you up.
Okay, Ken, we want to thank you for coming on. You've done a great job along with your staff of getting the first 5 rounds in. All the best at the finale, and if I can get a day pass, I'm going to try to finally get down to Grand Bend to check out that action, including Pro Sport Bike, where looks like it's going to be a shootout at Grand Bend for the championship.
Yeah, I'd love to have you, Pat.
Okay, Ken. Stuart, I think we've got a few more items before we have our conversation with Steve Crevier. You got to unmute.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just have a few other things that we were discussing before, and one of them was the American Flat Track Series from Williams Grove.
Yeah, and that was a great half mile, 2019 reigning champion, Briar Bauman, took the win in both of those, and Jared Mees had a pretty good weekend, but Mees is now in second, trailing Briar Bauman. They have 8 races still to go in American Flat Track. They'll be running in a couple of weeks in Dallas. That is a half mile, then a short track event in Atlanta, then a half mile at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and then it all wraps up on Thursday and Friday night in Daytona. They'll be running on that short track that's situated just outside of turns 1 and 2 of the super speedway. So looks like they're going to go right down to the wire to decide the American Flat Track. And one other note, Stuart, on the weekend at the half mile, we had the Royal Enfield, the debut of the Royal Enfield, ridden by Johnny Lewis in the production twins class. He ended up finishing 6th and 7th. So nice to have another brand racing there in American Flat Track. Johnny Lewis on the Royal Enfield, a couple of top 10 finishes on a brand new motorcycle that they really literally built in a couple of days, took it to the racetrack and had a pretty good debut. They'll be running the remaining 4 events and 8 races in that championship.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
And the news that came out last week is that the Daytona 200, the 79th Daytona 200, originally scheduled for the 14th of March, postponed to October 17th. That was to run in conjunction with the Championship Cup Series and American Sport Bike Racing Weekend at Daytona. It was canceled. So that'll be held in March. Hopefully things have improved to the point where they can run that race March. It is set for March the 13th, 2021. And another note, Stuart, I checked with Kevin Elliott. They'll be announcing very shortly the schedule for the October 17th, 18th weekend. Not official as yet, but they're looking at running their CCS and Ezra races at Daytona on the October 17th and 18th weekend without fans. And on that Friday will be the Team Hammer riding school. So looks like motorcycles will be at Daytona, but no Daytona 200.
Damn.
Well, it's good to know they're racing. It's a shame, though, that there's no 200.
So again, some of the upcoming events, American Flat Track will be racing September 25, 26. That's a Friday, Saturday. That'll be the Dallas Half Mile. And also coming up this weekend will be the final round of the Super Series. Believe they were originally planning a big 40th anniversary celebration of Canadian Superbike and 40 years that Superbikes would have run at Shannonville, but that type of celebration is going to have to wait for another year. And MotoGP getting back into action this weekend as well, Stuart, I believe.
Yeah, they are. They're back at Misano, so it appears they're doing back-to-back weekends using the same racetrack. So should be again, it's a tight series, so it should be a good race.
Okay, and again, you've got your Q&A button on your screens if you'd like to ask Steve Crevier any questions as we go through the next 30 minutes or so. Just hop on there, a question, a comment, and we invite Ken McAdam to stick around if you'd like to stay with us, Ken. But Steve Crevier, before we went on here, I was talking about 40 Canadian national superbike seasons, and we want to make note that last week as well, the announcement from Colin Fraser with CSBK that after the 4 superbike races, Jordan Zoke declared the 2020 Canadian Superbike champion, his 14th Canadian Superbike champion. To go along with your 6, Steve, that is 20 of 40 have either Steve Crevier or Jordan Zoke beside the champion for that year. So,
Man, he's racked it up. Yeah.
right.
Jordan's racked it up. Yeah. That's 14 is huge.
Yeah. So, Steve, in 2001, when you had won your 6th, and Jordan was really just getting started, he'd won his first in 1998. Did you think that your record would be broken and broken so big?
Yeah, you know, the thing is we go back there to like 2000, 2001, and that's the manufacturers were so very involved in racing. Problem I saw was they all wanted big trucks and trailers, you know, to make the paddock look good and everything, but it kind of, you know, I didn't see, I tell you, I think back then I was even looking at it thinking that the structure of racing itself wouldn't last that long. So, you know, Jordan being there all that time and everything that's pretty remarkable. I mean, he's a very gifted, talented rider. He puts it together. He's always got a good program, always got the best equipment, bikes and stuff like that. So, you know, but, you know, you could say the best, he's got this, there's not as much competition, it isn't the heyday and everything, but you got to show up and you got to put it together. And he's done that for like you say, 14 seasons. I mean, that's a remarkable career, and that's inking out a career, you know, on something that's very difficult. And especially in times after 2008, things are difficult. But going back to 2000, 2001, you know, it was kind of after that time where like all the contingency money started to drop, and, you know, the money was coming in and the truck and trailer show was getting too big. And, you know, and I didn't like the direction so much because they're saying, oh, well, we got to pay you your figures, and, you know, so it's hurting racing, and no, that's got nothing to do with it. It was a pretty small, you know, like pretty short reward for not a long-term goal, because the contingency dried up, then the grassroots dries up. Club racing didn't do well for a while. The superbike racing, the show, through the millennial, you know, decade, did quite great, but it just things, you know, like getting rid of the super bikes and standardizing the super bikes to more spec, you know, just caused everything. It just wasn't the directions that I really preferred. And I knew that long-term, the big truck and trailer show just, you know, wouldn't fly. It's not good for it. So, yeah, but, you know, and then going back to actually answer your question, something I don't do very often is like, I mean, I thought Jordan can pull off the 6. Yeah, for sure. I mean, my gosh, you know, like, but to get 14, wow. Is he like older than 55 now? I mean, I'm 55. Is he older
I
than me?
think he's a little younger than you, Steve. Steve, your 6 Superbike championships, 1 on the Yamaha, 3 on a Kawasaki, and then those final 2 in 2000, 2001 on the Honda RC51.
Yeah.
Compare those 3 motorcycles, and among the bikes that you won a Superbike championship on, which one was your favorite?
You know, I always say it. I'm a Yamaha fan. I've always been. You know, I like the dirt bike stuff, the motocross stuff. Everything always works really good. You know, with the super bikes and the 600s and everything as well, like Yamaha always gets very good and responsive front end feel. And when you get on the gas, they step out a little more, they spin a little more, but I've always kind of liked that. You can steer on them and confidently lean on that rear wheel generally. And they always have like a wider gearbox. So you're going to use, you know, like some corners will be like on the 600s 4th gear at like say Mossport and stuff, where all the other bikes are going to be stuck in 3rd, screaming it, and sort of can't really change these things up. But I've always preferred the Yamahas. And then after that, of course, my OW1 is my favorite all-time bike. I mean, I ran a production motorcycle, like stock, except for like the Steve White airbox, you know, and Rick Hobbs, you know, breathing on it and touching it, keeping it, you know, running really good. That was a great team that year with Ciampini. But the ZX7s came along after that. And in Canada, I got some time on the RC30s with Freddie Spencer and Two Brothers Racing in the States, but we got onto the Weldwright and the Belleville Kawasaki program, and with Harold Surian, and the kitted Kawasaki's, they came together really well. They were good bikes, but it's funny, you know, like just the fit and the finish of like that compared to like the Yamaha or maybe even a Honda, not quite the same. And so, I mean, going through all those bikes, it's Yamahas. And then going back to the last winning I did, unfortunately, in Superbikes was with the R1 with Scott Miller and Fast Company, riding Yamaha Canada's 07 R1s and 600s. But jump start penalty, something that was never enforced before, cost me a 600 championship because of arguments with the series and Yamaha. I had nothing to do with it, but unfortunately lost that. And with we won the last 3 rounds, even though I broke my damn hand, you know, like at Shubenacadie crash. We won the last 3 rounds, but we got off to a slow start because of chassis stuff was way too tight, needed to get on that. We lost a bit of time. And we had a little bit of a motor glitch because, you know, I was demanding Yamaha give us 3 test sessions on it. And they said they couldn't afford it. I said, you can't afford not to. And had we done, like we got to the Florida preseason test, then I stole all the equipment with Scott Miller, didn't return it to Canada with Yamaha. I said, hell no, man, these bikes are wrong. We got to get on it, Scott. And then we went to Barber and got a little more sorted out. But if we would have got one more ride in, we maybe would have caused this for the R1, this motor glitch we had because of it's, you know, me and Scott both, you know, were flabbergasted by the problem, but we solved the problem and we won everything after that. But I mean, damn, came so close, and to prove, you know, to prove my likings to be, you know, on and off of Yamahas and be able to win on them. I mean, that's a great thing. So Yamahas for me all the way. I'll always love them. That's the answer to your question.
And Steve, after that last Superbike championship in 2001, some lean years, but you did win the 2005 Sport Bike Championship on a Honda CBR 600. What stands out to you about that championship? Because you were in against some pretty talented riders in the Canadian Series.
Well, it's, you know, Pascal Picotti. Because Pascal, you know, he's, I think he could search the better tires, and Pascal has his way. He's very smart, works very hard, spends the money on his programs. Paul Fournier, who I had with the first RC 51 program and stuff like that, you know, we also had troubles because of fuel filters plugging for like 2 years that we didn't really understand, you know, inside. I mean, that's another thing. Paul Fournier just wishes that, you know, we could let that slide by. But I mean, we struggled with those RC51s because they'd be good for 2 laps or whatever. And because the unleaded fuel at the time, plug in the in-tank fuel filters. I don't think, I know Jordan and Jordan's program, Zoke's riding the Honda RC51 too. I don't think he had that problem. But, you know, like these things, like just, you're running a 400-pound bike that's making 115 horsepower and you're winning on it. It's a lot of work. But moving past those years and to 2005, from 2002, Honda took my racing program from Alan LaBrosse. And I say it's my racing because Alan ran it for me, but they took my program, put it in-house, and under the management of that Sal guy and Kevin, it wasn't good. The mechanics working too hard. Get into the first race of the season, 2001, put the bike on pole at Shannonville, and morning warm-up, the transmission locked up, spit me over, and it broke my kneecap. Now, sadly, that resulted in 5 kneecap surgeries, and I've got 1 bloody messed up knee. And so from 2002 to 2005, if you can believe, I had 5 kneecap surgeries. I had a broken bone extracted from my left wrist, carpal tunnel surgery by Rick Inman. Thanks, Rick Inman, the old racer. I had broken, I was out with Guy Giroux in Quebec and my cousin Emmanuel Crevier in Quebec, and I went testing Guy Giroux, you know, the enduro racer. I tested his supermoto, and I broke my right leg. I think we were riding the GSXR, broke my right leg the Wednesday before the last national. And I don't think I could get the points for a championship, but kind of hard to, you know, get around and not walk, you know, and lie to everybody. But after that weekend, it was only the fibula that broke clean across above the ankle. So that wasn't too bad. But with a knee as sore as it was and everything, so you had 5 knee surgeries, a broken bone out of my wrist, carpal tunnel surgery, broke my right leg, and 75 or 80 mile an hour tire failure at Mossport, which kind of really crushed my L5. You know, all these things in a 3-year span, and to be able to actually win on the Honda and get a championship, Well, Pat, I think that was pretty good. It was an awful time. It was awful time in my career, honestly. So much pain.
And Steve, so you sort of lay low for a little while, but then the Harley Davidson XR 1200 championship debuts in 2011, and it seemed like it was a renaissance of your career because you came back and racing against the likes of Michael Taylor and Darren James, David Estock. You win back-to-back championships on the XR 1200. It seemed like you adapted to that motorcycle that's completely different than the sport bike 600s and super bikes you've ridden. How easy was that transition to the Harley?
Well, it's like riding scooters and dating big girls. It's a whole bunch of fun, but you don't brag about it. Honestly, Pete Snell approached me, and Pete's been like 10 years, previous 10 years, I call him my Tenzei Norgay, because Pete's just such a mellow presence and 180 degrees different from me. And I really just appreciate that kind of persons around me because I'm too much for everything and everybody. But Pete got me into it, and Darren James and Dealey's helped me out with a little bit of travel money to support getting me out east. And then Motorsports Plus, I think they supplied me. Yeah, they supplied the bike first year. We spent a fair bit of money trying to do it. But I was only really worried about, outside, back in, we started with a Pirelli spec tire roll. And, I was pretty geared into the Dunlops before that. And when we got onto the Pirellis, I could never really steer the front end well on the Pirellis. Never really liked that through the Diablo years. And I think we rode them on the Honda in 05 and for the years following that. I didn't really prefer the way that they were. They came a super long way after that. It's just in a better triangulated feel and dropping in and be able to steer in. I really started to like that. But when I got to test the Harley, and we didn't get to test, we showed up at ICAR racetrack in Quebec, and unfortunately didn't have front brake lines, so I didn't know what was going to happen. But, I was worried that being the Harleys are, 520 pounds, 80 horsepower, I was worried that the bike team put so much weight on the front wheel. So, with all that I've learned and had to deal with, and, we run the Diablo programs and, a lot of hardship there. But doing all these odd, weird things for kind of more of the fun of it. And then the Buell and dealing with riding that, trying to figure things out with that. And I figured out a lot with Pete and Joe Skid, thanks. But with the Harley, I was just thinking, man, it's just going to suck. They're going to flat that tire. It's going to crush that sidewall. You're just going to, ride the race. It's going to suck. And honestly, I was shocked when I got on it. It's the most neutrally balanced bike I've ever ridden, where the weight's on the rear and the weight's on the front, and the front ain't pushing. And along with that, you had a decent set of brakes. You had a decent fork. Well, that sums up the bike. Yeah. So anyways, it wasn't a lot to brag about. But, I remember, and it was Cody Matichak was on fire because he'd been riding that thing and his. And the poor bugger already wore his bike out for the first race. And I remember going through the chicane. There's a chicane at the Maribel Airport racetrack. And it's like third or fourth gear. And it was like, I have no idea what this bike's going to do. And I have no idea how much room you need to stop with stock brake. I lost the race to Cody, but I was going to lose that race to Cody because I didn't want to wind up on my head first time riding him. I had no idea what it's going to do. I got to say, with like Pete and then with the additional help of Joe Skid, we worked with K-Tech suspension And, you know, being at the States, they had, you know, you always think things are better down there. And really, they were taking all the information. K-Tech took everything from what Pete sent them and the information, because he gives the best information they've ever had. And their fork kits and everything weren't really that great to start with, but they went totally to his numbers on everything. It's what they distributed like globally based on what Pete was sending. We ended up getting that bike to work really well. We ended up playing with dual spring rates on the rear, which the guys in the States weren't doing. I mean, they were doing a lot of engine work, and we were doing nothing for engine work. So you go to Indianapolis, you know, and I fight for fifth, and, you know, every corner's third and fourth gear exits, and every one of those corners, they're leading you off with, by the time they shift their third to fourth or whatever, putting like 15 bike lengths right there. You'll never make that. That's like 3 seconds a lap, just exiting these corners and nothing else. You know, we were really doing great stuff with the chassis, the K-Tech stuff with Pete. And, you know, Darren had a lot of access to stuff, but there's too much stuff with Darren James with Dealey's, and kind of hard to keep everything together because they went racing a lot. It's too much. And the first year, second year of my racing, but Mike Taylor came back, and with
Mackey Harley Davidson were sponsoring Michael. Yeah.
Yeah. So they, you know, they had a bike, you know, and, you know, it was all right. But then in 2013, the fun went out of everything because they got a bike from somewhere else. And Mike would come out to, you know, like it was fun to ride the bikes, fun that, you know, everything was kind of tame in Canada, because riding the bike in the States at Indy, it was a joke. I mean, it was crazy. Like, why would you even show up? I went, you know, with Dealey's and James Valley and everything. It's a lot of fun, but why would I want to race for fifth?
How much slower was your bike? If you're saying 80 horsepower, what kind of horsepower were the American XR 1200s running?
So here's the funny thing, and they only have the same horsepower, peak horsepower. The one first bike that I got, it made great peak horsepower, no torque, but these guys develop their engines and play a lot with all these, and I don't know what they do. They build the damn things, right? Well, they have gobs of torque. It just, like the Harleys, there's so much. The Japanese bikes come and, you know, you can't really change a lot because they're, what do you call their numbers? They, you know, it's very close. Everything's tolerances are very close. Where the Harley runs a pretty wide spectrum of tolerances and things. You can match and miss and match, go through things, and you can deck a lot of things everywhere, and you can make a lot more power out of them. You have to spend money, and we definitely didn't have any money. I had Pete, and then we had, what is it? Dino, Jim, oh gosh, how can I forget? For Dino, it'll come to me.
Dynajet?
Huh? No,
Dynajet?
Dino Dan, Fireman Dan, he was my mechanic there. God, now I've lost his name. He raced the Harleys with us at the beginning with, he's Jim Prue's friend anyways, forgive me. But the 2013 year, and then Mike shows up with a bike, and then Mike would pull the bike out, and on his second or third outlap, the first practice of this sets, he's a second and a half, you know, like faster than our best lap records. And it's like, what the heck? And so it got a bit serious, and I had to kind of focus more because you can't beat that. You know, like if a bike's coming out in the second or third outlap, the guy's like, you know, blistering like everything you've ever done the last 2 years. It's pretty trying. And I'm not saying it's cheating, but, you know, maybe they got a bike that was better than everybody else's by a huge shot. So, you know, it kind of, I didn't have a lot of fun with that because there's no straight up head-to-head racing with that. There's just, you know, like he would just run himself into his own problems, and I would try to keep winning. But, you know, I crashed at Shuby and didn't crash in 3 years. and it reminded me of how damn sore you can get. I crashed coming out of the carousel or whatever, and I rocked my body, rocked my back, and oh, I was sore. But it was a tough year. And then with JR at the end, I just, I got frustrated with things because just wasn't really going the way I want things to go. So I think that I decided to retire right there. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the Dealey's, the XR 1200 series. It was a lot of fun. I mean, but how do you adapt from, great work in super bikes, Scott Miller type, prepared bikes, or, and then how do you get onto like these things and go? Well, I'm going to tell you, really easy, because
Steve,
everybody else got the same thing.
Steve, let's take you back to sort of one of those lighter moments, and I know Henry DeGao is on our show tonight. Henry was telling me about the time that you went to his place in Florida, and he was running a little bit late, and you came face to face with this man eating goat. What do you remember about that, and having to jump in the back of your pickup truck while that goat was coming after you?
Holy cow, it's Henry DeGao. It's like, I say, Henry's kind of funny. I think he even ran, did he run a number 79?
79, and he was with you when you went to Macau, and was responsible for you going there.
Yeah, he was. Mike Trimble. And I wanted to go for years, but I kept having contractual, from testing at Daytona or something like. I could never go. And I really picked the worst year to go because something about the Pirelli tires, and they were 16.5-inch wheels, and we had to take the wheels off the Gixxer off of one of our GSXR super bikes. And I ran a Honda. We had a production, like a super sport production. Honda didn't have a budget for the CBR 1000 or whatever, right? And you're up against John McGuinness and all these guys, and their bikes are quite nice. But we had to throw on a Gixxer set of Gixxer wheels and the brakes, and I didn't like those tires. Like I say, they're kind of flat booby feel, and I ended up crashing the bike, but I just love that finally can actually go somewhere with Henry and make something work, because you don't really, he's the other corner of the continent to me. You don't really see what these guys do for the years that they put on, like local club racing. Everybody's got their part in racing. And I do nothing out west here. I got nothing to do with anything, like you with all your years of announcing, and brother Jake when he was in Halifax, everybody does so much for the sport. Henry's one of those guys. And,
we still want to get to this goat story, Crevier. We want to get to the goat story.
It's like I say, there's no lonely days, when you got goats on your farm, Henry? They're aggressive, though. I mean, they get what they want. Can't go into the goat stories. But anyways, so, Henry is just, he's a quality guy. And then going into Daytona being the 79-200, that's pretty cool. And I think it was Rick Shaw's number towards his end, eh? I
think you're right.
Yeah,
so Crevier, as I understand it, you hid in the back of your pickup truck until Henry arrived with the rescue team, and they had to put the goat back in his pen before you would even get out of the pickup truck. We want you to confirm that tonight here on Track Announcer's Notebook. We want the Howard Cosell.
Afraid of a goat? Who's afraid of a goat? I am. It's like I was afraid of the goat. It's like the bottom line, man. That goat was gonna have me. It's like, what can I say? I was never a goat tamer. I mean, I tried to tame some awful bikes, but not goats.
So maybe we can get Henry to text us in here, or to hop on the Q&A and let us know whether or not Billy the goat is still around in the farm there in Wellington, Florida. The goat that put fear into the eyes of Steve Crevier.
I was terrified.
Steve, you mentioned the Australian Superbike Classic events. and a bike that Scott Miller is building. What can we tell you a little? What can you tell us a little bit more about that? Of course, things are still up in the air with
Yeah.
COVID-19, whether or not that event can go ahead. But that sounds like a great trip and a great way to get back on a 1980s superbike.
Well, you know, I never got to ride those, and you know, I always say it's like one of my regrets, you know, in racing is to not actually ride like a TZ 750 or a true 500, you know, like, and the thing is, you know, they didn't really work right from the start, but there were some riders that made them work. And you know, when you take like the Kawasaki or the SR1 or whatever, it's the Eddie Lawson replica, like Ruben McMurder's had all those bikes, and Lang and Art Robbins, you know, with the big Suzukis and everything. You know, that was such a, you know, such a what do you call, like it's a bunch of cowboys, you know. It's such a hot time in the sport because, you know, people were just going crazy building up stuff, and it was sometimes great, sometimes dangerous, but everybody was shooting from the hip. They didn't know if it's going to work or not. Some things, you know, were good, but I miss that whole era. And then when I look at the way that those things run, and I look at the way that Scott got me to go on to look at the way that they're riding those things up there, and I'm like, holy crap, you know, I haven't even been on the bike, and it's like, I won't even be able to reach the bars. They're so big, but you know, the seat's got to come up 3 inches, and the rear sets have got to come up, you know, maybe even forward a little, and you got to get over the bars, and you got to drop the bars. You know, the tires will let you ride these things completely different than the way that they rode them. And you start looking, Pridmore broke his leg over this one little hole in like a divot. And, you know, you see every GoPro camera on the swing arms, they're hitting that same thing. There's just so much more you can do, but I don't think any of these guys can really understand how to set anything up really quickly, like to get there. So there'd be different bikes, but not really, because the thing is, it's like, you know, there's standardized suspension stuff. You already know what it's going to do and everything. And those twin shock things, well, they never really worked that great anyways. And, you know, I think that it's going to be a lot of fun. The idea, you know, they ran 1,000cc motors, but these are like 1,300 cc's with way better metals, way better pistons, way better cams, way better everything, carbs, way better tires and everything, and way better chassis. So it'll be really interesting. And Scott just got a Harris frame for that. And yeah, we lifted it, shortened the tank, moved forward, because, you know, you can't really put it to the spec of what do we call those guys, like Crosby over in England, you know, like his bikes. No, you got to sort of adapt to like the way things are and follow some current geometry. And I think Scott Miller is the guy for that. There's not, you know, Frank Littner and these guys helped me in the beginning and everything, and Gord Bush, all these guys are all smart. Everybody's got, like, in their own way, in areas are so great. But you take like a Scott Miller, and just around the whole bike, he's open, and he's, you know, he's understanding what you want, and he wants to get there himself. And, you know, sometimes he'll put aside his differences if you're going to prove to him you can do a good job. And you're going to get it done with that guy. He's the smartest motor builder. He does more to a cylinder head than anybody, I think.
Steve, what?
And I really want to get it done. Well, we got to find a little bit of money and that stuff.
Yeah,
But
assuming you find the budget, when would that bike be finished, built, ready to go?
I can't see it being ready. Like, there's January, they have a thing. I can't see it. I can't see it being ready, and it might be too much to push too fast. Scott's building a new shop. It's amazing what that guy can get done in time, but, you know, I've not been the greatest on getting me together because of stupid left knee trouble, and you know, and I went away for 2 months. I got locked up. No, I went away for a couple of months, and yeah, like I'm kind of hoping let this travel ban and everything kind of ease, and really want to get into it, but I really got to start riding more. And 3 years ago, I had an unbelievable great shoulder surgery, and I feel awesome. Everything's great except for I hurt that damn knee, and they, you know, I just don't want to shoot it. I don't want to freeze it. I don't want to just sit there and train in pain. So I'm kind of hoping Scott can't get it together, but I think he's listening. So who knows? It's like,
Steve, when you look back on your career here in Canada and the United States, give me the top 3 riders who were the toughest for you to race with head to head here in Canada, and your years in the United States. Who are the top 3 American riders that you had to go head to head with?
American or worldwide? As
World American.
God, you know, the thing is, like, you know, what really sucks, and it sucks bad, is there's this goofy little guy from Quebec that talks too much named Miguel. You know, he's, Dad did some great things, you know, and he starts riding. He's been like, the guy had talent before he started road racing. And, you know, pound for pound, through that time, like in the 90s and such, Miguel was simply probably about one of the greatest racers on the globe. And yeah, you know, but who is better? Like nobody. And Miguel would pull, you know, the thing with Miguel is he, you know, he could, on the last lap or two, he could pull up a win on people and make it come together. He doesn't even know why or how it happened, to be honest. He can make a story up, but he could pull a rabbit out of his ass so often and stay upright. And, you know, like, you know, he's not as smart setting a bike up like Pascal. Pascal with the numbers, kind of like Doug Poland, in that kind of way with the numbers and just the setup. Pascal, I think, is key for that, which, you know, he's not the heart. He was always one of my most honorable fights. I loved racing Pascal. Miguel in the early days, things were a bit rough. And, you know, like, and I got a lot of seconds to his first, which really, nobody wants to be a bridesmaid. But yeah, I got overshadowed, I think, you know, for trying to make a career in the States. Tough riders are, you know, like, it's funny because you get the Sadowskis and you get the Dale Quarterleys and, you know, like, you get riders and Merkel and Spencer and, you know, I team up with those guys. So you have some good races with those guys. And, you know, Russell is fast, but he's, you know, when you have bikes that are slightly different from what you're going to be on, like they kind of get away from you, but you sort of see what they're doing and it's great. You get guys like Mladen and, you know, he's riding angry the whole time but yeah, he's tactical and didn't get enough riding with him. I was on the TL and he is on the bigger and better things. But I gotta say, you know, like when the crap gets heavy and it's a dogfight, you got your Kerry Goodfellows, you know, you've got your McVerders and you've got Mercier was never a dogfight. He's always quick. And whenever there's a problem, you leap off like a cat and never get hurt. It's funny, our Canadian, I wish I got Art when Art was more competitive. I got in Art, but like Clive Nigakin, you know, like we've had so many characters in Canada and aggressive and hard chargers. You don't even have to talk about the guys in the States, to be honest. Like seriously, we've had a clown show forever. It's just been, if you look at the 80s and how it all started to evolve, you know, with like in 1986, I think, in my van with Tom Walter, Rick Hobbs, Peter Wiley, Steve Wyatt, and Gary Goodfellow, and we all traveled across the country. Didn't know where the racetrack was, pulled off at the Shannonville 401 exit. Tom Walter slept in a lawn chair on top of the roof. I had my bed. You know, the 5 of us in a van that blew up in Golden, that we had to rebuild the heads on the side at the side of a marine shop in Golden, BC. I don't know, it was a marine shop in a mountain. But, you know, that was a really exhausting but kind of fun trip. And the first time we went out west, and everything just seemed to change, you know, because we always got this news out east and everything, and the west wasn't really that lively, but we had a lot of lively talent. And, you know, it just, Tommy Douglas, you know, everything just started to click, and the racing was crazy. I mean, there's not even a need to really go into the States at all. We've had so much characters in Canada, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. And Steve, the one race here in Canada, when the world came to Mosport, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, what do you remember of that World Superbike round? I believe you were on the number 48 Yamaha 750. What was that experience like?
It was great. It was good and it was bad. I mean, it was great because I actually, you know, you get these like Falapa, you know, and you got Terry Reimer, and they had all these works Yamahas, and they're so tricked. You know, I didn't even notice there's a race going on. I was just like looking at those bikes because I wish I had something like that, or the brakes, or the set of wheels, or the forks, or anything, or an engine piece, you know, like. But you know, it was to get the world caliber of what World Superbike, you know, what Steve McLaughlin got built, you know, like so rapidly, to get that kind of hardware to like land like in Eastern Canada to do this Mosport race. I know Mosport, you know, he's had Halewood and, you know, everybody in the past, but it was dried up for a while. To have the world guys come there, and I know that they don't, it's a bit dangerous at the time for them, and probably still now, but to have those guys there, oh my gosh, I was just, you know, like Rob Phillips, you know, it just Aaron Slate, the names are just crazy. It was so great. But myself, you know, you're only going to get to do so much, like on a bike that, if you can't draft bikes, you can't, you know, you can only do so much. Hope tire wear is a factor. You're hunting down the end. I mean, that's what we did. We got 5th, but the sad thing is as I rolled in with my 5th, my engine is tying up. And I came in, I said to Steve Wyatt and Rick, I says, no, man, this thing's done. The engine's just packed it in. We're finished. We can't ride the second leg. We scored 5th. Okay, great, because we came from a way back thing. But I think it was Miguel had a really great Suzuki, and then Ruben always has good bikes. And he had, I think, the RC30, you know, big engine stuff. We were not in that league, but to score a 5th and work our way through and to pass like Parvano, you know, like I think we passed Parvano, and his hardware was, you know, the factory teams. But we lost the motor, and, you know, like Steve and Rick didn't really kind of believe me. And then we started the second leg, and the motor went poof, just pooped itself. So the problem with that is we got a race in a couple of weeks, or a week or so, or weeks, and there's no motor. But we caught the eye of one Max Suzuki, a gentleman that was more of the Marine division for Canada on Yamaha's Marine division. So Max Suzuki, apparently the wrong last name, he's realized the trouble we're having, and he got Japan. He got me a motor.
That's your motor.
Yeah, and if we didn't have that, wouldn't have my championship, wouldn't have had the chance to go to Mexico, you know, and to win a world round down there, like, you know, like, oh yeah, Merkel didn't give it his 100% best shot, but everyone else did. So
well, you did.
You know, it was a tough race because of the engine thing. Yeah, but we got so lucky.
But you did Canada proud in Mexico later on that fall. I think we've got one comment that I'm going to go to Stuart and Odell with. Stuart, what have we got? I think we got a comment from Henry DeGao.
Oh,
Yeah, we do, Pat. Thanks. Henry just wanted Steve to know that it's all safe at his house now because he did give away the goat, and the goat drove off riding shotgun in a pickup truck.
if
Crevier,
that thing could get up, if it could open a tailgate, I wouldn't be here
right.
today. I know it.
Yeah. Well, the book that is going to be written about Steve Crevier will have to have a chapter about the goat, and I know just the guy to write that chapter, Henry
I
DeGal.
am terrified of animals. It's hilarious. You know, animals. I'm terrified of them. It's like
The
Well,
goat is scared of a goat.
Stuart, anything else before we wrap things up? Part 2 of our conversation with Steve Crevier.
Yeah, just someone wanted to know Steve, who inspired you in terms of your coming up through the ranks in racing? Like, I know for me and my generation, we looked up to you. Like, you were the guy coming up in the early 90s.
Oh, thanks.
Guys that you would have patterned yourself after.
Well, to say, like, I was raised in Port Coquitlam, and the track was across the valley, and my grandfather is an Englishman. You know, he came out, and his 2 sons actually rode back east at Senair and was it Trumbull? But so I had 2 uncles that actually raced. So my grandpa came out, and I think I got to see Duhamel, but my first admiration for a rider was Stevie Baker. And I mean, he's my all-time hero because, you know, that's the most casually calm person that you're ever going to meet to, you know, win America's first world championship. Of course, being Canadian sponsored, but Steve was, you know, just a great guy. Bob Work was a lot of fun. So I admired those guys. And, you know, sadly, I didn't get any kind of help. Steve Dick, since the first day I set foot up at Westwood on the racetrack on the Wednesday night practice nights or whatever, is the only guy to actually come and say, to help me out and sit there and say, you know, well, this is what you got to do. You got to do this tweak here. And, you know, and I'd be, oh, no, I can't do that. I don't want to wreck that part. You know, I got to give the bike back. And Steve with his big grin used to, I wouldn't worry about giving that bike back. I seen it's not coming back. But I always was able, for Pacific Yamaha, I was always able to give the bikes back. So our relationship was great because I never cost them money. But if I could have, you know, like, you know, I looked up to Goodfellow because of his aggression, like just pure fire, not a lot of skill, just hard-ass rider. And, you know, I really begged him because he's going to Japan to get me to Japan, send me there, because I just want to fight war. I was so angry and such angst in me. Like, I didn't need to be here because I was teaching, you know, Steve Wyatt, Daryl Michaels, you know, like, you know, if you don't get seasoned mechanics when you first start, your stuff doesn't last. It was costing me too much money. I was going broke so fast. And it was like, you're never going to recover from that. But thanks to, you know, the 89 season with, yeah, I did get back, you know, I paid back everything I was in debt for. But I wanted, you know, Gary sent Tom. Gary had some bad broken feet, and he sent Tom Walter to Japan. And I was like, man, no, send Tom, you know. And unfortunately, Tom passed away that trip. But it was like, just send me there. Like, I'll never come back. Like, just send me to Japan. Never got there at that young age. But, you know, so you get these guys at the racetrack, like Goodfellow, I admired his courage and stuff. But for purely picking me up and saying, I want to do something in my life. I mean, I was 8 or 10. I got a picture with Jim Dunn's bike, and Steve Baker was, you know, there. I got to see him race. But I never got on a motorcycle until I was 15. I was like 11 telling everybody I'm going to be a motorcycle racer when I grow up. I didn't even know I was.
Steve, you became a fine motorcycle racer. 6 Canadian National Superbike Championships, as we said. We also want to congratulate Jordan Zoke tonight on his 14th Canadian Superbike Championship. The law firm of Zoke and Crevier winning 20 of those 40 Canadian Superbike Championships. Steve, we want to thank you for...
I don't know how many I got. I have no idea.
Well, I think we're still going to see you on the racetrack, either in Australia on that classic Superbike or something else. We want to thank you for coming on not only tonight, but a couple of weeks ago to share the life and career of Steve Crevier. Also want to thank Ken McAdam with SOAR. Their final round coming up October 3rd and 4th. And this coming weekend, Stuart, we've got the Super Series at Shannonville, and we've got MotoGP and Moto America all racing. It's another busy weekend. We'll recap it next Monday night, and also have a number of special guests, including Tony Sharpless, who is about to launch her brand new supersonic road racing school. Steve, maybe Tony can get you out there to teach in that new supersonic road racing school. That'll wrap it up. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. On behalf of Stuart and Odell, this is Pat Gonsalves saying so long for now. We'll see you back next Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on Track Announcers Notebook. Have a great week.